Hello everyone, this is Sharif Abuzet from Translation Partner, and I'm very excited because today I have a friend and a client to talk about website translation best practices. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you, Sheriff, so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about a topic that is really close to my heart and my
Yeah,
work.
yes, actually, this conversation that we are going to have was inspired by your latest presentation at the WP Summit, where you gave
The
an excellent
Atarim,
presentation
yeah.
about how to create multilingual websites. So, you are my friend, and I know everything about you, at least. Okay, but for those who are watching us for the first time, tell us more about yourself. I mean, what language do you translate into, your specialization, and your story with creating multilingual websites.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Tanya Quintieri. My company is Miss Divi, and I started translating in 2002, German English, English German, predominantly for IT companies. And in 2012, I founded an agency together with a designer, and we offered um, international corporate communication solutions, and that included websites. And so I started learning how to build websites and understanding the ropes of multilingual websites because it's more than meets the eye, as so often. And so over the years, I've made myself a name in the translation industry as a web designer and vice versa in the web design community, web development community. I'm the girl who knows everything about multilingual websites and how to approach those projects.
So you have positioned yourself to be the creator of multilingual websites,
Right.
right? But you don't just create multilingual websites from English and German. I mean, you
No.
create them for multiple languages, right?
Yeah. I think my biggest build in terms of languages was 17 languages.
Wow.
Yeah, but usually the websites I build um, or that clients ask me to work on are usually somewhere between 2 and 8 languages.
But not only in WordPress. I mean, you work with
No,
other multilingual content management systems, such as like,
Typo 3, Contao. Some of my marketing agency clients have their own CMS that they've built. So yeah, it's personally I only build with WordPress because it's just a product that I love and I love the community. Um, but I do work in other CMS as
CMSs.
well.
Okay, great. So, I mean, for multilingual websites, when someone when we do a keyword research about this terminology or this type of process, I find people look for or search for website translation and website localization. So basically, what are the differences between these these processes? What is the difference between translation and localization regarding websites?
Okay, so when you translate a website, that works if you're in a culturally similar environment from language to language. But even then, it's kind of yeah, it's just the tip of the iceberg. You're just basically translating content. You're not speaking to your audience. Whereas when you're localizing a website, you're taking your audience into account, their cultural differences, the way that they buy things that are important to them. Like a German customer will place emphasis on other values than perhaps a client in Italy, even, right? One of the most prevalent examples in the translation world is the marketing and the branding for the pasta manufacturer Barilla.
Mhm.
Like in Germany, they speak to efficiency and all that, whereas in their marketing in Italian, they put a high focus on, the family coming together at the end of the day at the table, and it all being about spending time with la mamma.
The mama.
Um, so the same applies basically to websites. Different people will pay attention to different things. And when I say people, I'm not talking about persons, but the people of a nation or a country, right? And localization also takes things into account like holidays that are specific to that country. Um, so maybe even the seasons, right?
The
Like
season.
a company that markets outdoor sports equipment to Germany might do that at a different time when they do it in Australia, because their seasons are flipped, right? So that
let,
would be the difference.
let me give you an example that happened to me right today. I was trying to start, yes, I mean, I was using, it was a software called Team Viewer to access someone, to remote access a computer. And once I opened the software, a pop-up message appeared and said Ramadan Kareem. And now we are in the fasting month of Ramadan. It was in English, although it is in English, not in Arabic, but still, this is a localized version, a localized message of the software for me as a user living in a Muslim country where we are fasting right now. So localization, I mean, translation for me is that you just translate the content directly, while localization, maybe you take care of the images, you take care of the proper names in the target country, the currency converters, the other types. I mean, especially specifically the images, I think they are one of the most obvious ways of localization. So basically, translation is a direct translation or a direct rendering of the words or sentences, but localization takes other things into perspective, right?
And yes, and also very practical things, not just only about the message, but let's think about the user interface. Okay.
There's an interface, yeah.
I have that a lot with clients who are based in the US. They will ask me to translate their website, and then we get to the contact form, and I say, "Hey guys, you're going to have to build a different contact form
Yeah.
for your audience in Europe or in Germany." And they'll ask me why, and I say, "Well, because if you're collecting an address, like an actual, shipping address, something like that, you're going to have to need other fields, right? Where, like for US customers, obviously they have to select the state." But you can't ask, or you can ask that in Germany, but it wouldn't make any sense because it's not relevant, right? That's not how our zip codes work, etc. It's a much, much smaller country. So, and Americans put the house number first and then the street. In Germany, that's flipped. You don't want to ask information that Germans simply don't have available. We don't have states like that. Um, and that's pretty similar throughout Europe, the way we write addresses. It's just so different from the way they do it in the US. And users will get frustrated, right? When they try to fill in something and they have to think, wait, why is this, not in the order that I'm used to? And having a UX that is localized, does exactly what it did for you today with the Team Viewer software. Was it necessary for the software to work to wish you a good Ramadan? No. But did it make you feel better? Did it make you
Yep.
feel
Yep.
appreciated, like they understand where you're coming from, literally and figuratively speaking? So yeah, the UX is also a very, very important
So
aspect to take
it's
care of.
not trans. I mean, localization is not only about the content; it's about the process, how they see it, the screen. I mean, this is the UX.
Mhm.
Okay, now let's go deeper in the process of translating a website. I mean, this is how I look at it. There are two directions of the website translation. I mean, there is a technical part which is related to the CMS and the translation software, and there is the content part. And let's start with the content part. I mean, specifically in translation. Okay, this is this is the usual approach that clients come to us as experts in translation, website translation, and they say, okay, we need you to translate this website. I mean, do you think this is the right approach, or do they have a certain strategy to translate the website, not just starting with the content? I mean, what about search engine optimization factors? What about the other factors? Give us
Okay.
an idea about that.
Okay, so I see that a lot, that clients get all excited, their product is doing well at home, and especially now with COVID and the pandemic, they want to reach more people, and they get this idea, okay, I am going to sell my sneakers in Spain,
Mm,
and that's all fine. So you can translate that into Spanish or into Arabic, whatever. And then, well, Arabic takes us to a whole another level, because then we're also talking about desktop publishing and things like that, right? Which is where you guys come in, where I rely on you guys because you know what you're doing. Um, but it's things like SEO. obviously. You can't just translate your metadata, just having it from one language into another. It doesn't work. You're going to have to see, how do people search? Just recently, I read a study about how people in different countries use Google, and like what is the most searched for phrases, whatever, in general, right? So people in the Czech Republic turn to other things, turn to Google for other reasons than people in Africa, right? And it's the same with SEO, and that doesn't just stop with your metadata. That's, takes into account your 404 page, your archive pages. It takes into consideration the naming of your images, right? You have to think about things like accessibility. Um, People who don't pay attention to accessibility lose about 20% of possible website traffic. And that's not just, saying that 20% of the world is blind. That is not the point. When I'm talking about accessibility, I'm saying things like taking into consideration different devices, taking into consideration different bandwidths, taking into consideration things like sight impairments that aren't necessarily situations where you're talking about text to speech, but people who are colorblind, for instance, right? Things like that. So all of that also has to go into the localization and translation process, and that is something that people don't very think about very often. The next thing is, a lot of people like to, uh, you know, minimize their burden in terms of being online all the time, answering common questions.
Yeah.
So they use chatbots. So if I go and sell my sneakers in Egypt, and I have a chatbot on my website, but that chatbot only speaks English, what is that going to do for me?
Yep.
Right? That again sends the message, I want your money. I don't care about, building a client relationship with you. I just want to have your money. And then people will turn away because either you're going to be there and talk to me or you won't, right? There's no half. There's an English word that sounds really bad, but it's not bad. It's half-assing something, like when you're not totally committed to something, right? So taking into account SEO, chatbots, accessibility, all those things, it goes far deeper than what the user
Yes.
sees when he first visits the website.
I mean, you have gone deeper, more than ever more than even what I thought about content translation, or for website translation process. Um, if I think that if clients come to or start the project of website translation from a perspective of having more conversion, I mean, they need to look at this new website, at this new copy of their website, as a new project that they need to do all their best to convert customers, to convert visitors into customers,
Right.
and to attract more traffic. Even from, I'm coming from a content perspective more of this. Okay, recently I was translating a set of keywords for a client, and they asked us to translate the word shaving device. Okay, I found two accurate translations. No one can say they are wrong. However, one of them has like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but one of them has like 4,000 monthly searches, and the other one has like 200 monthly searches. Which one should we use? I mean, this is the, you clients are translating their website to have more traffic. So considering keywords translation even before starting the process itself is very, very important. What I see that clients come and this is actually happened this again this morning. I was analyzing a content from a new client. He said we just need to translate it. I told him, but
Yeah.
do you have a set of keywords that you want to target? What about style guides? This takes us to another level of the process about consistency. I mean, again, there are other levels of quality. I mean, usually when people look at quality, they look, clients come to us, they just look at, okay, we need this sentence to be translated correctly. What about, you mentioned about accessibility and UI or UX. What about keeping consistency of the same menu items across all the pages? This is another perspective. Let's talk about, this takes us to another level of the conversation, that is the difference between machine translation and human translation. I mean, yesterday we were taking charge of a new client, and when we were discussing, they came to us. They said we had challenges about translation. As I asked them, what type of challenges did you have? They said the website was first translated by machine translation, and we didn't like it. I need to know your input about machine translation versus human translation. And I know that you will give an honest review or an honest thought, not because you are a human translator, you will defend the human translation. But I need to know your input about this.
Okay, so I'll tell you something. And I'm speaking from a client's perspective here, okay?
Yeah.
If you're going to translate a website and you're going to go for the cheapest translator who claims they know everything, but they don't ask the right questions, you're probably going to have more luck with machine translation, depending on the language combination, because there is plenty of, machines out there who understand the context of, okay, this is copy on a website, and I know start button is translated to home or, whatever. Machines understand that. However, they're not good at localizing. That's the point. So before you work with somebody who doesn't understand how a website works, who doesn't understand what your goal with the website is, because not everybody puts a website up to sell more product, right? There's as many reasons for websites why they even exist as there is businesses. So when it's just about information, depending on the language combination, this does
Yeah.
not work for every language combination, okay? It works for when a machine translates directly from, let's say, German to English, okay? That's my own language combination. I will always say prefer a human who knows what they're doing. But in this case, if it's just about relaying information, by all means, go ahead and install a Google Translate plugin, but don't expect it to work for you in terms of converting your visitors. They
Yeah.
will just come there. They will know that it's a bad translation and they will take it for what it's worth. However, working with a human translator who doesn't know how websites work and what their purpose is, etc., as I said, the result is going to be just as bad because the translation itself is not going to do anything for you. It's just going to relay information. It's not going to sell. It's not going to make people fall in love with your brand, all that stuff. So, what is my personal approach? I will always go for human translators and I will put together teams. I leave it up to them because they are the experts in their language, whether or not they want to start off with a machine translation or not. I think a lot more translators use it than admit it.
Yeah.
But but turning a machine translation into something that's really good and then adding on top the skills you need as a website translator, I think that it's a viable solution. But bottom line is, it's not going to make it cheaper. It might make it faster, but it's not going to make it cheaper. And that is a misconception that clients often have. I'll run it through a machine, I'll give it to my translator, they'll fix it, we upload the translation, done. It doesn't work like that. I would argue that this approach would probably make the entire project a lot more expensive in terms of
Yeah.
the content not converting, right? So I would always advise to use or to work with human translators who understand what they're translating, not just the fact that it's a website, but perhaps also the domain. Like I would never translate the content on a website about tractors, right? Because I just don't know the terminology. And I have tools to do the job right. That is, for one, in my case, for WordPress, I work with WPML.
Yeah.
I have for 13 years, I don't know, but for a very long time. I'm one of their registered service providers in the translation space. And I work with CAT tools.
Cat tools. I mean, can you explain more about cat tools? Are they machine translation tools, or
No,
what
no,
is?
no. You can combine a CAT tool with machine translation, but a CAT tool essentially is a catalog of all the translations you've ever done. And you can narrow that down to specific clients or to specific type of texts. A very popular example would be if I were to translate birth certificates all the time, right? They're always the same. It's just the details that change. So by using a cat tool, I can reuse the stuff that I can reuse without having to retranslate it from scratch. And that is what a cat tool essentially does.
I always refer to cat tools. I mean, I know cat tools, but I want to just people to know about them. I always refer to cat tools as tools used to manage the translation, so you can do it faster with higher quality. But
Yes,
at the end of the day, they are just used to manage your process. They
they
don't
don't do the
do
work.
they don't do the work. We human, of course, we can integrate them with a third party API or something to create machine translation, but still, mainly they are used by translators to create human translation. Okay, this is a good sentence to start our next side of the talk about the software. You said that you are a registered user or you are a registered service provider for the WPML WordPress plugin. I know this is one of, not maybe not one of, but it is the best or the oldest translation WordPress plugin for translation services. But still, there are many tools and many software now in the market. When if you are going to choose a new one, if you are going to consult a client to choose a website translation software, what criteria do you have in mind, or do you suggest to them to look for in this website translation software? What criteria will you use?
Okay, so usually the person who designs the website or who develops the website usually doesn't really or is not very trained in handling multilingual content, right? So you're going to want to use a software that allows you as the website owner to manage the translations, meaning that you can, like in the back end, you can send it off to your translator. They know exactly what they have to translate. They have access to the content, to image names, etc. You want to make sure that it preferably has something like a term base or a translation memory, which WPML does. I don't know if other products do, but I could imagine so that you can reuse certain things, like, for instance, your claim. You don't want to have to retranslate that on every
Not all
site,
of them. Let me tell you something.
right?
Not all of them. Not all of
No?
them. No, no.
Okay.
I had a very bad experience regarding this perspective, this criteria. Anyway, not all of them.
And then there's some very popular, like in the recent 2 years, I was surprised. I went to the WordCamp in Berlin, which was in 2019, I think, and that's like the Europe event for web designers and web developers. And there was so many solutions for website translation. And in so many cases, the client did not own the translation. So when you quit the subscription, your translations are gone. And
So
I think that's horrible, right? Because you
you mean
paid.
they are in the servers of the software
Yes.
company?
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
They make it all simple, and that's all good. I'm all for simple solutions, but I want to own my stuff,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I don't want to say any names, because, they do a fantastic job. And so many websites these days, they're only up for a year or two and whatever, and then businesses move on. And that's fine. But you want to make sure that you own your content.
On the translation itself. I mean, this is you
And
have
does it
answered.
support, and one more thing, you want to make sure that it supports any language that you might want to translate into in the future. Because if you take a translation software and then you find out it doesn't do left to right, or it doesn't handle kanjis or whatever, for Japan, um, that would be a bummer if you would have to rebuild the whole system just to include other typographies.
A client of mine had to delay the launch of their translated copy for, I think, 2 or 3 months, because they discovered that the software we are using, they have recommended this to us. I mean, they asked us to use it. Doesn't support RTL language, so they
Mm,
had to ask their developers to, tweak the CSS and do some extra coding to make it support
yeah.
the RTL language. One of my main concerns when it comes to translation software is that it should manage the translation easily, and as you mentioned, the client should be able to store the translation in their servers. Also, the export um, feature of the software. This for me, this is really important because I worked with a software that could only export the content into, I think it was the CSV file. We
Mm.
had a horrible experience to manage the translation. And but other software can support like XLIFF format, which is, I mean, you need before you start using a translation software, you need to make sure that it can export your content into different formats. That's why I always recommend clients that don't start or don't buy a translation software before choosing your translator. You need to ask your translator about the software they use to translate the website, and make sure that the translation software and the translator tools, which is cat tools in our, so in our case, are aligned to each other. So you
To
can have.
throw out to throw out some important keywords in this regard, you want to look that your solution is scalable.
Uh-huh.
You want to bring in your translator as early as possible, even in a consulting role, when you know that you're going to have a website that's going to be multilingual, or if you're, having a redesign of your website or just a rebuild because your website is out of aged, I guess, whatever. So scalable, you want to have it future proof, right? Because translators have an eye on their market. They understand how markets are developing. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much sense, to well,
To
for
stay
me,
in the
it wouldn't
market.
make much sense. Um, so I have an eye on the market. I understand where the industries that I translate in, where they're going to, where they're heading to. Um, so my ideal situation is always that the client gets in touch with me the minute they decide I'm going to have a new website built. And then they're like, okay, Tanya, is there anything we should take into account right now? And then I can say, this and this and this and this is going to be important down the line. So please keep that in mind. And then I'm out. If I'm not, developing or designing the website, then I'm out. And they bring me back in later. And it's just so much, the whole project runs so much smoother. And the results that the client attains are so much better because I am a stakeholder in that process, right? Or, well, maybe not a stakeholder, but I'm part of the value chain. And the earlier the client realizes that, the better for the outcome for the project.
It's one of the main problems that clients ask translator to jump into the website after they have already built it. But sometimes I can understand the situation because at the beginning maybe a client doesn't have a clear strategy about the target countries they may want to enter. Maybe their business just boomed or just witnessed a good um, increase or growth, so they want to add other languages, or they want to target other countries. But still, I mean, what I always recommend that don't just consider translation, or don't just consider the website translation process as just rendering words for words.
Right,
I mean, the intent or the reason clients are translating their website is to increase conversions, and they need to sell more. Once they have this in mind during the whole process, this will give them more ideas about how to implement the process more
right.
accurately. Okay, Tanya, I think we have talked about many things in this short chat. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. And I'm really sorry about the technology challenges
No
that we had
problem.
before
No
starting to
problem.
record this. Thanks so much, Tanya,
Thank you for
and
having me.
have a good day. Thanks.
You
Bye.
too. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.